What's good, everybody? It's Devin here with Bridging the Gap. You already know what it is. Today, we'll be talking with my buddy Niklas Steensen. Steensen, or is it Steensen?
Steensen.
Steensen. We're talking to Steensen because Coach couldn't be here, but we're going to talk to him about a couple of things. Niklas is a aspiring writer, poet, and I don't even know all the things he's into. He's dabbling into so many things. From Denmark. He's a good friend of mine. So let's go ahead and give it up for Niklas. Niklas, tell the people about yourself.
No, I'm Niklas, and I'm 20 years old. I live in Denmark, so it's a bit a different one this time. Yeah. So the deal we're going to talk about, you're going to tell us about that?
Yeah, so we're gonna dabble into a couple of things, but first I want to start off by asking about just living at Denmark. And, I just want to ask a couple questions about that in comparison to the United States. What's the general morale in Denmark? I know a lot of countries in Europe are kind of starting to take a shit dive. France is going crazy, and the UK is a mess. And, everywhere you look in Europe, there's kind of like this thing going on. So I wonder how it is in Denmark right now.
I mean, Denmark is still going kind of to the hounds in some ways, and in my opinion it is, because like this new political wave have paved way for like racism in some parties in Denmark. Like there's a lot of terms and a lot of things and a lot of new laws that have come in to the system that subtly allows a little bit of racism, I think. And with all these, the immigrants and the people fleeing from war and all of this, in some political parties seem to antagonize these groups as a part of their political agenda, and some parties are coming up that are kind of closer to Nazi Germany in a way, like some of the ideologies.
Yeah,
and it's scary.
I don't mean to interrupt, but this is actually a theme that's going on a lot around the world. Is the rise of almost
anti-Semitism,
nationalist, almost borderline nationalist, authoritarian governments of America. China, a lot of different governments around the world are heading towards this authoritarian approach.
But I mean, Denmark is not as bad, I think, as many other countries, but it's still going to shit. I mean, and we are being more and more Americanized. Like, only like 10, 20 years ago, we were very free in terms of, our the way we viewed our bodies. Like, we were allowed to see other people naked, like women could breastfeed anywhere. Men could walk around without shirts. Some women might even have done that earlier on, not like 20 years ago, 10 years ago. But because our society have been more Americanized in the way we view our bodies, and we need to like put on clothes and not show the goodies,
Show the goodies, show the biddies.
I feel like we are not as free about our bodies as we used to be, because of all this media, and because they are showing like advertisement for the perfect bodies, like girls gotta be thin, guys gotta be strong and masculine and all this shit. I'm like,
so hold on, just to cut you off real quick. So are you saying like 10, 20 years ago there weren't commercials that idealized people's bodies? Like they would show a perfume commercial,
there was
a commercial where it'd be like a fat chick or something?
There was, but people didn't give a shit. That's the issue here. People have begun to give a shit about this because media is becoming such a big part of our lives that people just normatize it.
Now, would you say these are media outlets run by how would I put it? Would you say they're media outlets run by political groups? Kind of like we have in the United States, we have CNN and Fox News that are, polar opposites of each other. One's like all Democratic and the other one's all Republican.
No, it's private ads. It's private companies. I don't know if they have political agendas.
Well, yeah, but
it's private companies that have come in and shown us these commercials and stuff. It's not like the political parties do not delve into this as much. That's the freedom of the companies.
Okay. I was going to say, because, around here, America, I would say that we're borderline not even a democracy, more like a corpocracy, where the corporations get into the pockets of the politicians.
Yeah, lobbyism, yeah.
Yeah, and, just...
And we have, we've gotten a little bit more of lobbyism. We have had a few cases recently where, for example, there was this case where the state have lost, billions of Danish crowns because somebody have been whitewashing within a specific sector of the Danish bank. It's called Danske Bank, Danish bank.
Danske Bank. If you say anything in Danish, I just want to make this very clear that I am going to butcher it majorly. There's just no hope for me, so I apologize in advance.
It's just translated. It's called Danish bank, and it was a weird one because everybody's pointing fingers at different people, and it was just a big shitstorm. And one of the directors, he was fired, but he was given I don't know 24 million or something as a part of his deal, because he signed a contract years ago that if he was going to go off, he was going to get a lot of money, and he was basically a paid vacation. It's just
so he got in trouble, and instead of getting in trouble, he got a vacation essentially.
Yeah, it's fucking weird.
Yeah, trust me, it's nothing different than what we have here in America. Give me 1 sec, Nick. I got to do one little maintenance thing here. Okay, I put a sock on my cock, and by that I mean I put a thing on my microphone. So, do I sound a little muffled?
No, it's fine.
Okay. So, sorry. Okay, getting back to what you were saying, and about Denmark and the politicians and the things that are going on there, I just think it's very interesting, and especially whenever you start saying about anti-Semitism. Now, what?
I don't think it's that extreme, but there's one or two parties in particular that are out there. They are not sitting in the parliament at all, but because they don't get enough votes, right? But they are still some of it. I feel like it's just the rhetoric of it all, and in the debates, what are you even talking about? This is other human beings. They're saying all of these very mean things.
Now, I want to be clear, because this is something I always see, and from European news articles and stuff, they're talking about the Muslim things going on, because you have Muslims from the Middle East coming into all these European countries.
Not necessarily Muslims, just refugees.
What particular demographic are they using to... or ethnic group are they using to claim that we're a danger? Because here in America right now it's the Mexicans. They tried the Muslim thing, didn't really work, but now we're back on the Mexicans. We're all scared of the Mexicans now. We're building the wall.
It's always been the Middle Eastern people here in Denmark. It's always the us or them rhetoric, with the Mexicans in America.
So it's Middle Eastern people.
Yeah, and it's been that for I remember it as when I was a kid from 2000, just before the financial crisis in 2008, I think. I remember beginning to hear in politics from some different parties and some different people in politics. I remember hearing racial slurs and the us and them rhetoric, and it's become more prominent these days than it's ever been, which is kind of sad, because I think that there's still people and they're fleeing from war, and sometimes there have been some cases here in Denmark where they send children that would be perfect Danish citizens. They have no relation to the other country that they have of blood,
from, right?
come from, that they have no relation to this country, and they send kids off because they don't have the right permits. Like, they send kids off that have no relation or no like real close family in this country. They ship them off to this other country. Like, they could be a fucking benefit to our society, but our some of our ministers are like, nope, you gotta go back. And I'm like, why? They have friends here. They have family here. They have everything here.
So they're sending like children, teenagers, people that aren't like quite of age of 18 over the border. And,
yes, they've sent 16, 15-year-olds away.
Mm-hmm. And they're not of age, and they're worried that they might pass on extremist ideals or the ideals of that other country.
No, I think I think the way they think about it is like, they don't have the right permits, they gotta go. Or like because there's a certain party I'm thinking of named DF, which stands for Dansk Folkeparti, or Danish Folk Party. Like, it's kind of one of the most nationalistic parties we have in the parliament. Mm-hmm. And they are sitting on the government right now with another party, the leftist party, and I don't like. I'm too socialistic and liberalistic in that sense for me to think it's all right. Like, I don't think the way they're handling it and the way they're shipping people off that don't have any relation to the country they're being sent to, that's just cruelty.
So you're saying, like, for instance, Syrian refugees, they would take those, and instead of shipping them off to the country that they came from, or sending them back that way, they're putting them in different countries altogether where they have nobody, just because...
They maybe have an uncle or an aunt they don't have any relation to, and then they gotta establish themselves in this society they don't know anything of.
The Danish society?
No, the other society.
The other society, okay. Oh, so you're saying that they're shipping off people that are already in Denmark, that have been there, and then...
That has been there for years. Like, been there for ages on ages.
Yeah, I feel like I totally missed something when you said that, because you were talking and I was sitting there thinking, like, so they're shipping them, not accepting them, or... Yeah, so they're taking people that are actually citizens there and making them go.
They are good citizens. The good citizens. The only thing is that they don't have the permits, and like, they are so good at Danish and so good at, the Danish values, and know the language, know the culture, like, they could pass the fucking tests and get the permits. But still, they're like, no, they gotta go back. They are not Danish. I'm
they're
like,
not giving them the opportunity.
Fuck, they are. They are Danish.
If you live in Denmark, I think you're naturalized to become a citizen. And if you can take the test, then I think that they should. Are they not giving people the opportunity to take the test? They're saying, no, you don't get to take the test. You are of this descent. You need to leave.
It's because it has something to do with, I think, the parents or something. Like, if I don't know what the political agenda is for that, but it's something about the parents and their permits, and if the parents can't stay and such, they have to go with their parents back.
That's just, I mean, it is the same scenarios that we have here in America. We have ICE, which is basically deals with citizens that come from different countries. It's our immigration people. And they have been awful with I don't know if you've heard about the camps that we had down in Mexico or by Mexico, where we were taking children away from their parents and keeping them cooped up away from their parents, locked up kind of like animals.
Yeah.
And then they finally got back to their parents, and they were traumatized. It's tragic, really. It really is. We've been treating these people like they're animals, and I think it's very funny that we'll focus on this for a couple more months, probably, this whole Mexican thing, and then it'll probably calm down, and it'll go to something else that we'll probably find to hate or get mad at, I'm sure.
I've heard these cases where
either the rich or the Muslims, so we within a couple months we either go back to hating rich people or Muslims. It's one or the other.
I've heard about a few cases where people meet their parents after, like Mexican people meet their parents after they've been separated from them for ages, where they stayed in Mexico and the young ones stayed in America, and then they meet their parents and they don't know them, and they've built up all of this anger because they felt like the parents left them, but in any case they couldn't see them. It's like horrible.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I totally agree. That is exactly what would happen. Is there would be kids that would come out and finally be sent back to their parents in Mexico, and they'd be crying. They would be crying, saying, "Why did you leave me there?" Like the kids don't have any concept of what is going on.
Even I saw
they take it and internalize it as, "Oh my God, my parents abandoned me to this." You know, and then they got bullied. I mean, and the kids are mean. You know, I watched this video of a border patrol officer talking about it. He's like, "You think these kids are nice? They're mean." And I said, "That's all kids. That doesn't matter if you're Mexican or European or you know, Danish, Pennsylvania person like myself. Doesn't matter where you are. Kids, if you put a bunch of kids together and let them have their own hierarchy, where there's, you know, there's barely, like, you basically put a bunch of kids in a prison, right? And then the only person stopping anything is, you know, the wardens or whatever. They're going to be douchebags to each other. They don't have any concept of idea of empathy. I mean, as most children mentally, like when they're developing, are narcissistic. They only think of themselves. It's hard for those concepts. We only gradually gain these empathetic, these ideas of empathy and everything. We only gradually gain them as we're growing older, usually by like our teens and stuff. But like when we're younger, especially like if you're in the ages between like they had kids there from like what, like 5 to, you know, 12. I mean, they had all kinds of ages of kids, even babies. But you know, the ages between 5 to 12, we're not fully developed in our minds yet. So we're you know, narcissistic. We only think of ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, you can get that in every case of life, but it's more prominent in children that doesn't get raised properly.
Right.
No, but I saw this one case where there was this woman at age, I think she was 21 or 25 or something, that gets reunited with the parents. She was of Mexican descent, right, and was living in America. Lived in America most of her life because she was taken away from her parents, right? And she meets her parents, and she's like, I don't know these people. And I really, and she explained that she felt this hatred towards them, and she had a hard time letting it go, even though it wasn't their fault, right? Mm-hmm. And she felt like it was unfair that she felt like they sat back and didn't do nothing. I don't know if they did, but still
I mean, at that rate, there was nothing they could do. I mean, they're citizens of a different country. They treat them as such. You're not allowed to have influence over this country. You're not a citizen, and they take your kid, which is, you know, like I said, it's absurd. And now what we have soldiers at the border of Mexico. We have our military personnel there who are.
Yeah, didn't Trump just order them to shoot on sight if they wanted to?
Yeah. If something like that escalated, they had someone die and they were throwing tear gas at them, and it was not good. Man. Yeah. So, but it's not. This isn't anything totally different. We had a similar situation where Native Americans were protesting a pipeline being built through their territory. I want to say it was Standing Rock. Maybe no, that was a shooting. I don't know. I forget now, and I can't think of what it's called. Maybe I am right, but there was all these people protesting this pipeline, and they were going to build the pipeline through this Indian land. And I learned that it had a little bit to do with the Native Americans, because there was a meeting that they didn't show up to, and they had opportunity to show up to say what they needed to say, but they didn't. So the American government just decided, well, we're going to keep going with our plans if they don't want to show up. And then they protested and said, no, you can't build through here. And, you know, we had riot teams come through with, you know, rubber bullets and all kinds of stuff, gas, and just got all these people out of the way that would protesting. And then what they did is, after they gassed them and tore them out of their camps that they had set up to build the protest for the long haul, then they said that, look, they don't even care about the land. They don't care about the land because they left all their tents and stuff there and all their garbage, because they couldn't even clean it up because they were getting gassed and shot and harassed and getting basically physically pushed off the land. So I think it's kind of crazy how they twisted the narrative like that.
Yeah, but how you've done that to them once, America.
Well, really, we already did it to them. I mean, because what we did was we're like, oh, we fucked up. We're so sorry. Here's a little bit of land, and here's a little bit of money, and blah, 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 blah. And then what happens
They are a
now?
fraction of what they used to
eminent
be.
domain, we say, well, the government can reclaim any piece of land. So really, at the end of the day, really, you don't own anything. We like to think of this idea of private property, but we really don't own anything, because at any point in time, if the government claims or deems that they need my house or whatever for any purpose, they're going to take it from me. They're stealing my house. They're taking the land from me for whatever purpose they need it for. So the pipeline, I mean,
Doesn't the law say you can actually shoot them if they enter your property?
Yeah. I don't doubt that. I mean, you probably still would get in trouble. I mean, we just had a case in here, Nick, in our country, about a woman who killed her rapist. She was 15 years old.
Oh yeah. I've seen that.
Yeah,
I've seen that.
15. She's in her teens. She killed her rapist and is sentenced to 51 years in prison. She killed her rapist, the man who bought her. She was a sex slave, and she's the one going to prison for 51 years, basically a life sentence. And then we have people that are, we have men that are getting caught in rape charges that are getting 3 months. That doesn't sit right with me. So.
No, it doesn't sit right at all.
Yeah, no kidding. Like, not even remotely close. Imagine being a sex prisoner. Like, even in a dude's perspective. Like, imagine this woman that kidnapped you, ugliest. She's like 45. She's obviously a sociopath, because she thinks that she can buy you and own you like property for her sexual needs, right? A woman buys you or a man if he's gay, or
It doesn't necessarily translate to sociopathy, but whatever.
Yeah. Well, I know it isn't just being a sociopath, but I mean, those are the sociopath tendencies. I mean, you have problems with just societal norms and so forth. But what I'm saying is that now you have that person, like, forcibly having sex with you. You're a man, right? Even as a man, you have this woman who's just, or like I said, man who's maybe forcibly having anal sex with you. Then you kill him, and then you went to prison for 51 years. Like, how fucked up is that? Like, the guy is taking advantage of me. He's just violating all of my rights. I was sold like property, and then I go to jail. What are you supposed to do? Get out of the house? Break free from the house?
It reminds me that I really I signed a petition where you could leave your what's it called? Not your mark, but you sign something, right? Mm-hmm. Online sign petition, and I signed for I think it was Amnesty International, human rights activists, whatever. They wanted to push for the Danish politicians to discuss and debate or push for a law that says that people should always have consent in rape, should always have consent. Yeah, consent.
Consent. Yeah, I would say content.
Consent.
Consent. Yeah, you should always have hate in your heart and dislike for somebody.
No. Consent to sex, right? And if in many rape cases, what happens is that you feel paralyzed and you don't really say anything or do anything. You just go with the flow, right? And you just take whatever's happening to you, and it's horrible, man, because a lot of people freezes up like that. It's just animal instincts. In Denmark, in the cases, they focus on, did you struggle? They ask a rape victim, did you struggle? What did you do to escape the situation? And all the studies show that, and all the what people say is that they freeze up. They freeze up. They can't say anything. They feel paralyzed.
Disagree with me on this, and that's okay. But like, I think it's hard to tell if someone is it's hard for
it's a gray zone, because it's hard to say.
It's a very gray area, because someone can, because in my country, a woman. I mean, it's bullshit anyway, because the men don't get punished, which is why I'm mad, because there are men that are actually rapists that need to be punished, but they're not getting anything. But on the other hand, there are times where literally a woman could come out and just say that she was raped. It doesn't even matter. A man could, if he wanted to. I mean, he would get laughed at because because in my society, men aren't supposed to not enjoy sex. So, if a man has,
that's like,
a woman pushes herself on him, if a woman pushes herself onto a man, it makes him feel pressure to have sex with her, which, I've been in situations, I haven't had sex with a girl that I didn't want to have sex with, but I've had, bits where like women have pressed themselves onto me and I don't find them attractive at all, like they're ugly or they're mean people, or I'm not sexually into them, and they're still basically harassing me, but I don't report that to anybody. I tend to handle that myself, and
same,
and,
but
and I don't feel like you have to make yourself out to be the victim in that case. You just refuse it and say no and walk away. I mean, and then there's whenever the men who come on to you, who put force into you, like if you're a man who's trying to rape a woman, that's when it becomes to me rape or sexual harassment. Whenever it's like you
but it's hard. It's gruesome because it's a really hard thing to prove.
It is.
It's a really hard thing to prove.
Yeah, and not only is it like a hard thing to prove, it's hard because you have to guess intentions, and it's a lot of them. There's a lot of emotional things that go into a rape, and and the idea that you could be wanting it in the moment, like you could want to have sex with somebody, and then afterward you totally regret it, and then there's the idea.
That's another thing. That's not rape.
Yeah. What's that?
That's another thing. If you regret it afterwards, that's not rape then.
Thank you, Nick. At least I'm glad, because I thought that's where we were going to disagree, because I was gonna say that's not rape. If you have sex with somebody and then afterward regret it, or
that's just regret. That's just regret. That happens a lot. I've regretted having sex with people, but I didn't feel raped. Like it was not rape. And I know I've been raped. I know what rape feels like. That was not rape.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know that you were raped, Nick. I apologize. It's a pretty sensitive topic now that you're saying it.
It is a sensitive topic, but I'm not going to hold it back. I don't give a shit.
Well, right, and I think that's why we need to have these conversations, especially whenever we're talking about it, because we need to really talk about it as like, and also too, we have to try and get outside of our gender roles that we tend to play, because society has put us in these gender roles that we need to play the part, play the piper, so to speak.
I have physical scars, real scars, big scars, that is a testament, a mark of the fact that I've been raped. It's, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And are you okay if I ask you questions about this?
I am.
You are?
I'm all cool. Cool.
So was this like a man or a woman?
It's a woman.
Woman, okay. And then was it like one of those things where, like, I mean, how did you respond to her advances? Did she force herself onto you, which it sounds like it would be the case, or was it
it's
like one of those things where like she just kept bugging you, and after you told her no so many times you gave in, kind of deal, or what?
I gave in, but I kind of, it manifested itself as a thing where I couldn't. She was my girlfriend, right, at the time of my like the hardest time of my life, being depressed and all that, and I get into a relationship, right, and this girl, she was very psychotic, had very psychotic tendencies, and wanted to force her own will upon me, wanted to force her emotions upon me, and everything was my fault, even though she was the one at fault, right? And she kept telling me that it was my fault, and one day she loved me to heavens, the other day she hated me like it was nothing, and that was very hurtful, and in the end it like manifested itself, and it took a hold of me, and I felt like I was worthless, right? And we had sex a lot, and at first it was nice just to get that relief, but she was forcefully, girls like to scratch backs when the guy's on top, right?
Oh yeah, of course.
But
what the masochism? Yeah.
Yeah. But she would sometimes, or oftentimes when we were together, she would have put fake nails on with the purpose of ripping my back open. That's why I have these scars.
So
Um,
she now so basically what you're saying is like you guys were in like I mean it sounded like you were in almost a manipulative type relationship where she was.
we were, but that in the end, the only thing I could do to make her shut up or for myself to put up with it was to turn her on and fuck her to bits. That I mean, and it
Turn
was
her on and fuck her to bits.
it was
I mean, I'm
her.
sorry,
It
I
was.
don't want to laugh at your.
I,
your
I mean, it was her.
It's funny.
It's fine. It's fine. I mean, it was hurtful for both me and for her. But I felt uh, I felt raped because she was always forcing me into these things. I actually in the whole spectrum of it, I didn't want to have sex with her. I just wanted I I just wanted to get away from it all, and it
But
was both a relief getting like my back ripped open, but just because getting having physical pain on your body when you're mentally ill is like pissing your pants in a wetsuit, right? It's really warm in the start, but the water is cold, so eventually the piss will go cold and uncomfortable, and
this is a
and really unnerving.
this is a really dirty but also very vivid uh, imagery that you're giving me right now.
Just gotta get the message.
Well, of course, yeah, I'm getting what you're saying, but I'm just saying like that's an analogy that I didn't think that you would say, but I'm picking up what you're throwing down, because it's this you feel nothing and then there's this warmth that comes over you because it's something, it's feeling, it's an actual feeling, because it's pain,
But it
and
was still hurtful. Like afterwards, it will just go down a black spiral. Like it will just hurt even more. And I felt dehumanized, and I felt hateful and angry and spiteful. And
now I want to circle back now because me and you just had this conversation about regret, a sexual act that you afterward regret being, just a regret. It's not actually rape.
I regretted. I regretted it. I regretted it during it. I regretted it afterwards. It was like, yeah, I hated it. And sometimes she would force me to have sex, even though I didn't want to. In many cases, that was the case. She would toy with me and play with me and touch me in places I didn't want to be touched. She could harass me on the street, like randomly, just poking her finger into my belly button, and it would hurt. And she would on the street randomly just put her finger in my ass, like randomly out of the blue, like what the actual
You don't
fuck?
understand you can't see my face to the reaction I just made, but wow, she was putting her finger randomly in your butt. That is, yeah, that is wow.
And I didn't know how to react, so I kind of just laughed at it, but inside I was like crying.
How do you? I, I don't know. I mean, me, if someone starts sticking a finger in my ass and I don't ask for it and I don't want it, which I'm gonna go on a limb and say that I'm not about that life. I'm done.
I was
like
yeah,
I'm
well,
like,
I was really,
who she is, what she's about. I'm done. I'm like, all right, this is over.
yeah, but that's how it would be now, right? But at the time,
at the time, of course.
my confidence was null. I didn't have any, and she just made it worse.
Yeah, but at the same time, she sounds like what she did is, and this is what I mean by manipulative in relationships. She made it seem like she was the only source of your validation or your love or acceptance, because she would toy with you constantly. But then the only way you could feel anything was whenever she would do things positively or show you.
But it was a mix of feelings. Like I felt like I needed to do it in a way. Like because that was like, it's weird. It's really weird. It's really weird. And I feel like I've been raped, but I don't blame her. She was psychotic and she was sick, and I was sick, and I don't blame her. I've forgiven her a long time ago. That doesn't mean that I want to see her again or be her friend or anything. I've just forgiven her.
Right. Yeah, I think that might be something very important too, as you move forward, to acknowledge those feelings, especially if you understand that she was, not in the right set of mind as you were. But this actually is a good segue into what we were going to talk about today. So today we're talking a little bit about depression, and Nick wants to talk about his personal experiences with it. And I'm trying to, what I want to try to get out of this conversation is I kind of want to pin down what depression really is, because me personally, I have a belief that there is a difference between being depressed and depression. Do you agree with that? That there's a difference?
In a sense, I agree with that. The terms have changed. Like depression in the past, or I am depressed, mean I am literally mentally ill. I am sick in my feelings. What depression means is that you have these chemical changes in your brain that you're unable to produce. The happy chemicals, so to speak, serotonin, dopamine. Like it's like you put a blanket over these chemical reactors so they can't release them into the brain. They get dull. They get almost like they're dazed or something. And it's a very real thing, and it's very hurtful to both you and your family. But I'm depressed. Like, I still kind of find myself holding on to the old way of saying it. So when everyone's saying I'm feeling depressed, I usually come out and say, you shouldn't use that rhetoric. You're not depressed. I know you. You're not. If it's a person I know very well, I find myself saying you're not depressed. You haven't experienced what depressed means. And I feel like the term has been.
So you, it sounds like you're using the terms I would, but in a different way. Because whenever I say someone has depression, they have that. To me, they have that chemical imbalance. You know what I mean? That you're speaking of. When I say someone's depressed, it just means that they are in a mood right now where they don't like themselves or something like that. Like they're in a point in their life, like it's only temporary, right? They're just in a bad place right now, right? And it'll
but
go
that's
away
just
eventually.
Yeah, but that's just sadness. In my case, that's just sadness or
Right, in that case, then, when for you and me, then we will only use depressed, the term depressed. I mean, in that sense, as a synonym for sadness. That's what I mean. That depressed is a synonym for sadness, which is just something that is
which has very much become.
No. Actually, you know what? No, I have to argue that with you for a second, because you can be sad and sadness can last a second. Sadness for me is like an emotion that kind of fades. When I say someone is depressed, people could be in a state of depression, not actually have depression, but they could be in a state of depression where they feel like things are bad, like they had good things in life, things are whatever, and now things are like bad for them and they feel bad, and it comes from like a low self-esteem. They've just hit a place that their life's so low that they have become depressed by their own thoughts and everything else.
Yeah, but
the difference to me is with depression, you can't get out of it because it's how you're wired, it's how your mind works. But with depressed, it's a mental thing, but it's an attitude thing. It's more like how you
can get out of depression, but it just usually takes longer depending on what type of depression it is.
Okay.
So you can get out of it. You can get your chemicals back, so to speak, with different methods that for example, some just methods that I've learned, for example, help me get back on track.
Okay, and some of those methods, are they all medical in the sense that you have to take some kind of medication for them, or are there different ways? Like,
I don't take medication. The only thing I remember, especially when I get seasonal depressions, which I'm very inclined, or not inclined, I'm very I get affected very easily by the winter. I think my body reacts heavily on the winter because I don't get any sun, so I react on the fact that I don't get any vitamin D. And so what I remember during the winter is I got to take my vitamin pills. That's the only pill I'm taking. And I got to remember to keep my sleep pattern on track. And I got to remember to stand up in the mirror whenever I can, like in the morning when I wake up, and tell myself that I'm good enough. And I every night before I go to bed, usually, not always, I write down 3 small things I want to achieve the next day. It could be a simple thing like give someone a hug, or smile to a stranger, or like make sure to do this in school today. Like simple small goals that I try to achieve, and it's not like it's guidelines. It's not that I have to achieve these things, because if I don't achieve one thing, I just write it on the next day, right? But just the importance of having small things to do and small things to keep to, and make sure I'm social, even though I not always want to. I might find it that being social actually lifts my spirit, even though I didn't feel like it at first. But then if it, like, my spirit just becomes unchanged, or I feel a little bit too moody, I go back, right? And it doesn't hurt anyone, doesn't hurt me, doesn't hurt my friends. Yeah, so I have different methods of handling and coping with this. And it's been very real. I had a very tough period a few weeks back, like 2-3 weeks back, where I really got down into the rabbit hole, you know.
Yeah, and this is something I just find interesting too. It's a good point you brought up, because I feel like I struggle with certain things kind of similar to what you're talking about, but I wouldn't consider myself depressed or having depression. I wouldn't consider myself that. Like I said, in the sense that, like, I do little things where I write down goals and I try to achieve these things in a day. If I don't get to them, get them tomorrow. And when the winter does come for me, I feel like shit. I feel worse than when it was in the summer or the spring.
Yeah, but the thing about...
And for me, what it is I'm not physically active, and I'm confined to a small space. I don't really go anywhere. I become this, very antisocial person who just sits in a room all day and works on like these kind of things, which is how I get some enjoyment and fulfillment. But it's hard because like I said, there's a party that wants to go out or move or go do something, and you feel kind of helpless, or you don't want to, and like it's like your mind's willing but your body won't move itself.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that the difference is when I get these feelings, right? I had this feeling in my body, in my stomach, in my chest, when I was out on, like, when I was in school and when I was doing different things, being in different places and around different people, I would feel this stress, and I would feel my muscles tighten, I would feel my stomach twirl, I'll feel sick, and like, I had the same feeling in my stomach and my chest that I had when I was really depressed at 14, 15. And I couldn't ignore it. And I went to my doctor, actually, and I said, I'm feeling very bad, and I can't sleep, even though I go to bed like around the same time every night in the weekdays, and I just lay in bed. I haven't looked at my phone. I haven't done any of these things that could keep me up. I would just lay there, turn, and I'll sleep when it's 4 o'clock at night. And it's just, I mean, and when I wake up, I wouldn't feel refreshed. I would either just stay in bed, or sometimes I would get up, and sometimes I would achieve a little goal, like going to school, actually. And I felt lost and angry and hateful and doubting myself, hating myself, actually hating myself for what I was or what I was doing.
And that hate, does that hate come from a lack of accomplishment, or a lack of one's, but not just a lack of accomplishment, but rather a lack of the person you are, because you feel unfulfilled? for instance,
It's
like
many.
because you hate yourself because there's this ideal portrait of yourself, right? That you have. I mean, I feel most people have an ideal portrait of themselves, and then with depression, they become very honest about that portrait or that idea of themselves, and they know they aren't hitting it, and they are. Do you feel disgraced that you don't hit that ideal mark?
Not
Or is it
not
something
necessarily honest. It depends on who you're honest to. Honest to yourself, honest to other people. It doesn't matter. The fact, like, there's a lot of factors. It could be a factor with the
Oh, I'm
honesty.
asking you specifically. I'm not talking about everybody else. I'm asking
Oh,
you specifically. Is that a reason, or is it something else?
no, it's not the honesty. I think it's many factors. I think it's the fact that winter is affecting me. Like I haven't been able to get my vitamin D, and I think that my some of the receptors in my brain have actually been dulled a little. Like I feel dazed, like I'm in a dream, but I'm not really in a dream. Like I feel like I'm sleepwalking, even though I'm not at all tired. It's weird, and it feels very weird, and it's a very abstract feeling, a very abstract like thing in my body, both in my head, in my mind, when I see things in my body, in my stomach. It's a very weird bodily experience, like, and I've recently the feeling has diminished. The feeling is kind of still there, and now I'm at. Before I was at the stage of these big feelings where I had mental breakdowns like every day. I kept crying, 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 crying myself to sleep, but and feeling hurtful, even though I didn't know what I felt hurtful about. I just felt hurtful. There's not necessarily any reason for depression to manifest itself. I mean, there's the reasons usually just lies within yourself and in your system. Uh, Sometimes, like, of course, there's outside factors, but sometimes they're not as obvious as one thinks.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing too is people might have depression and they don't even know why, and they I think they lack maybe the cognitive abilities of not just of knowing their own physical, the world around them, like they're looking at those things, but they also within themselves they don't understand
And you
themselves.
can be a high functioning member of society and of your social group and of your like, and that's called high functioning depression. You can still have depression and still do well in all the aspects you're supposed to by the norm, but you don't feel fulfilled. You don't feel anything. You feel empty.
So it's like you're achieving, and I get that too. I've actually I've seen people who talk about there was a post that's always going around about this girl who said about her brother passed away, and he took his own life, and he was a high school athlete. He had a girlfriend. He had everything basically. I mean that most people would idealize or want, and he still took his own life. He was going to school. Like everything seemed great, and then he just one day out of nowhere offed himself. And I think that's one of the real crazy dangers of depression is that
And same time, we
some
can't
people
know if
can
it
literally
was.
some people can literally look like they're 110% okay, and you wouldn't even suspect that they were suicidal or struggling or anything, and then one day they're gone or something crazy happens.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird. It's just one of those impulses. Like I know for myself that time to time when I feel really bad, I can have the lust or the feeling or the wanting to hurt myself or even want to try and take my own life. But I'm very aware of this, and I am really aware of what the winter does to me because it's a pattern that has happened every winter in the last few years. So I kind of know what to do. And that's a sense of clarity, and it's a when I think about it, it's very nice and it's very calm in that sense because it is calming and reassuring to know that I know what to do to feel better, right? Or at least just feel passive, or at least just feel empty, but not feel like everything is crashing down, right?
Yeah, because It's that idea that you know it's not the end of the world, and I know I can deal with this, and I know I can fight it, which is good. It's a good inner strength to have.
It's taking control. It's just taking control of your depression, taking control of your anxiety and your stress, and dealing with it and doing something.
And I want to circle back to suicide because this is something I must confess, but at the same time talk to you because I'm curious. I wouldn't call them suicidal thoughts. I would call them suicidal urges. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. It's
where I will see something and like I will almost literally have the feeling of wanting to put it or like stab myself or put my hand somewhere like I work at a shoe factory and there's this machine that it shoots needles through it. I'll feel like I want to put my hand in the needle thing. Like I have random thoughts of like hurting myself or like if I see a fork I have this really like this urge to shove it in my neck or something crazy, something absurd.
Yeah, but it's not. Actually, it's not absurd. People think it's absurd, but it's actually very real, very normal human thoughts to have. There's nothing weird about it. People just make it out to be weird. Every people has them.
Yeah,
like every fucking person has them.
Okay, sorry. Where I think that thought might come from that it's absurd is the fact that we don't vocalize these thoughts, because we're just like, oh God, did I just think about stabbing myself in the neck with a knife?
And it's not
tell anybody about that.
Yeah, not accepted thoughts. It's they'll think you're sick or something. But I have these thoughts, and I know they're just thoughts. In my case, I don't feel like, and I don't want my thoughts to define who I am. I want my habits and what I do to define what I am. I want my stories to define what I am. I want my that's how I feel about it. That's what I want to define me. If people say you're your thoughts, I don't associate with that. I'm not my thoughts. If I was my thoughts, I would have killed myself.
Yeah, well, that's what's crazy to me. I'm glad you're still here, Nick. But those ideas of those, if you wouldn't have those thoughts of like what, yeah, I think now when I say this about the ideal that we have for what we want to be and stuff, we can then once we have this ideal that we know we can get, which I think that's probably the first step of beating depression. Would you agree? Is that knowing that you can beat it?
Yeah, knowing that you can beat it or cope with it or live with it, control it, yeah.
Because if you're someone who has depression and you're fighting it right now, and if it's barreling down on you to where you feel like you can't even handle it anymore, I mean, that's whenever you're struggling. But the only way you can really come back is you have to first understand that you can live with it, cope with it, beat it, and keep moving forward. And you have
to understand too that you can't beat it alone. You need people.
Oh yes, that was what I was about to bring up. Is you have to get a supporting cast of people around you that support you. They understand you. Because what's true is you could surround yourself with people, but if they don't understand you or empathize with you, then there might as well just be nobody there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but I mean, if they don't, sometimes it's enough if a person just pretends they understand you. Like, as long as it feels like they understand you, that's the most important thing. Fuck if they understand you or not.
Yeah. But I was gonna say is, I mean, sincerity. People can fake sincerity, but I'm saying they have to have. If they don't truly understand, that's okay. But I'm saying they have to give at least the appearance of understanding, or
Yeah, the appearance of understanding, and I think the most important thing is that people listen. That's all. Listening. Don't say anything. Don't try to give advice. Don't try. Just listen. Fuck advice. Just listen.
Right, and if you just listen to the person whenever they're speaking or complaining about their ideas, or not their ideas, their thoughts, and how they're feeling and everything else, because that's really they just want to have that idea that someone listens, and that makes them feel like you care more than giving advice, because we're often very wired as people, as individuals, to just respond to things.
Yeah, and giving advice feels like you're forcing your own opinion or your own agenda on me, a depressed soul,
and you're at that point, you're just giving me more. If I'm a depressed person, you're giving me something more to worry about. Because now I got to take in your advice or what you think or your whatever it is that you're trying to say.
Yeah, I feel like you're kind of blaming me in a sense, that why don't you just do this? You can do this. You could do that. You could.
Yeah, I agree with that too. The whole, you say, why can't you just do this? Why can't you just do this one thing? Like I can do it.
And not necessarily said in that way. I mean, it doesn't matter if it's said in that way or it's said more like kind of more nice in a way. I mean, it still gets the same feeling across for someone who's depressed. That's my experience with depression, at least. I just wanted people to listen, and gladly I had a few people, but I don't blame people for leaving me, or I don't blame people for not taking contact, or because a lot of people when you're 14 15 don't understand depression, and that's fair enough. And I was very vocal about my feelings, and I got some special treatment from the school. Like I had some other boundaries than others because I needed those boundaries, and the other kids didn't understand, and they mocked me for it. But because they didn't have the same rights that I had. But I needed these rights. I needed these other different boundaries, and I needed to be able to leave and take a breather and do these things. I'll still come to school. I'll still be there, but sometimes I just had to leave to get my stress under control and my anxious self under control, right? And these people didn't understand, and I lost a lot of friends. And at last, I only had like my mother, my aunt, and my grandmother who helped me, and that's I had those.
Yeah, and I've also heard this too. We're actually starting to run out of time here for the podcast, so I'm going to try and sum this up and then ask you one final thing. But they say the one of the final wars that we'll be fighting here in terms of social justice will be the wars for the criminal or the mentally ill. There are a lot of different institutions, whether it be professional sports ball leagues, various work institutions that don't see mental illness as a real disability. Like I have a panic anxiety disorder that it's hard for me when I'm sitting at work to I'll get very anxious, a lot of energy, a lot of thoughts come over me. And it usually comes from like some irrational fear of death or dying, or I feel like I'm dying, and that's what usually triggers the panic attacks.
I know about different parts of anxiety and different parts of I know a lot about mental health. My little brother has an anxiety disorder, and he has autism too. So.
Yeah, well, and this is what I meant though, is like when I'm at work though, and I have to sit in this chair all day long, and there are times when that where I just need to take a walk, I need to take a breath, I need to take a breather, and I feel like I'm literally going insane in my own seat. It's very hard because I'm trying to, because basically there's this part of my being that wants to scream, and it wants to cry out, and it wants to just go somewhere and move around because it just feels like you need to move, and I can't, because especially when I was working for DirecTV, when I was a technical support agent, I would have to be on the phone with somebody. Well, if you're in the middle of a phone call and a panic attack starts, you can't leave. You got to stay on the phone with that person. So and you could see it like break out of me in twitches through my hands. Like my hands, I just start moving my hands like this, or start clenching my fists, or just start wiggling my arm or legs very, very fast, because I feel like all this energy comes up over top of me, and I feel like I just need to move or go somewhere or do something, and hell, sometimes the thoughts don't even come to you right away. They come out of nowhere. You have no warning prior to whenever these things are going to start. And it would be nice at jobs and schools and anything that they could make accommodations for that. Like if I was working and I could just if any time that I had a panic attack, I could leave my workstation, right? And then once it settled down, I would come right back. but they don't make those accommodations. If you started doing that too much, the other workers would get mad at you. They would get angry. They wouldn't understand that you have these issues, these problems.
Yeah.
And then the business, because they hate that their workers are getting mad, that what do? They fire you instead of making those accommodations. They say that you don't need these accommodations, you're just lazy.
Yeah, and that's the difference between Denmark and America. Because in Denmark, as long as you have a good boss, right, and you have a good company, and if you have good colleagues, you can talk to them about it, and they'll accommodate you. So you can talk to them privately and just say, "Hey, I have this thing," and if they know you're doing your work right, they won't fire you. They would just accommodate you with it, so it's fine. I mean, they would. It's not in all cases they don't accommodate you, right? But in the broad spectrum of work in Denmark, they usually actually accommodate you for it and help you.
Well, I was going to say too, and this is my last piece on it, and I have one last question to ask you, but that in my country, that there are places that will make accommodations for you. I've had talks with my supervisor where I fought it as long as I could, because I'm a person who doesn't like to ask for help for things. I'm just stubborn that way. I like to try and fight everything and take everything and burden it all on my own shoulders.
You still should ask for help, man.
Yeah, and well, finally I couldn't fight it the one day at work, and I had told my supervisor, "Hey, Rick, can I talk with you real quick?" Rich, and I said, "I need to talk to you real quick," and I said, "Hey, I have a panic anxiety disorder. Like, I'm freaking out right now." I was like, "I needed to go leave and like take a breather for like an hour," and he let me clock out, and I walked around, and then I came back to work. Like, I just took a breather and came back, and everything was fine. And it's nice that, like, and that made me feel great, because what it meant to me, it meant so much more than just having that hour. What it meant to me was, if there's ever a time where I don't feel okay, like if I don't feel okay to like be, I'm not in the right set of mind, and I'm not focusing on my work or anything, I can leave, and I can de-stress, because it usually makes it so much more tense and hurtful whenever I have to stay there. So again, this has actually been a really, really good conversation we've had today, Nick. But my final question to you was in regards to your depressive state now and everything. You've already given some tips, but I would say, name me the two things that are the most important to you if you're someone struggling with depression. What are the two things people got to remember?
Two things. There's a lot of things, but the two most important things would be, make sure you have people around you, that you surround yourself with people that understand what's happening, or at least sympathize or empathize with you, and that they want to be around you, and that you don't isolate yourself, even though that's what you feel like, right?
Yeah.
And the other thing is that make sure you do these small things for yourself. You make these small goals, write them down, and just remember them. Try to remember them each day. Like, give someone a hug, someone that you like, or tidy up your bed. Or then you've completed the first task of the day. Or stand in the mirror and tell yourself that you're good enough, even though you don't believe it. If you like, believe it or don't believe it, doesn't matter. Just tell it. Look yourself in the eye and tell yourself you're good enough, and you're gonna make it.
You're good enough. You're good enough. There, did I just told myself in my webcam that I was good enough. And hey, everybody that's out there, you are good enough too. Remember everything that Nick has said. I want to again thank Nick so much for coming on the show today. Like I said, I'll have him on again probably. We'll talk about all kinds of different things. This is actually a really great discussion. I'm glad we got to have it. Nick, if there's anything that you want me to link or for everybody to go look at, let me know. But as of this time of recording, guys, I should be getting very close to setting it up so you guys will be able to listen to our podcast on iTunes and Spotify and wherever the hell else you guys want me to put it. I'll be sure to get it there. Go ahead and check out our Facebook page. That's Bridging the Gap. And if you want to look at the link, that's just facebook.com/bridgingthegap55. And also, you go ahead and check us out on Instagram. You can find me at Mediated Media, and on Twitter, Bridging the Gap 55. And I think that's it. Oh yeah, and our YouTube channel, Mediated Media. But as for me, that is all. As always, stay beautiful. Again, Nick, thank you so much for coming on. Enjoy yourselves, guys. Take care of yourselves. See you.
Yeah, bye. Take care.